might join us now on Drive the Lane, who will be calling tonight's Ohio State-Duke game, Jay Bilas. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Great to be with you.
Absolutely, and an absolute pleasure to have you on. We were just joking about how I never was playing in a game or sitting on the bench during a game that you called. I'm happy that you are back in Columbus, calling a meaningful basketball game, a game that we called the most meaningful game in Columbus in the last 10 years. We'll dive into that game in a minute, but we got to hear from the Billustrator first on the state of the union of the NCAA in basketball this year. Who are some of the teams that you have taken a liking to so far?
Well, Purdue, I haven't seen anybody better than Purdue. They're really good, as you guys know, and they have everything. They've got, great depth and incredible size. They can shoot it from multiple positions, and they've got a number of different pros on their team. And, if you're going to win a championship, you got to have NBA players, and they have NBA players. I think Duke is excellent, and they're only going to get better as long as they stay healthy. They're young in spots, but they're uber talented, and they blend athleticism. They've got a bunch of NBA players, and they've got size, and they're very, very physical, and they're physical at multiple spots. And then sort of the usual suspects. I mean, I think Kansas is excellent, even though they got beat by Dayton the other night. There are a number of teams. I mean, I don't think anybody and Gonzaga is great. They're actually better in a lot of ways than they were last year. They don't score it quite as easily. But they're averaging about 90 points a game. But last year they were an offensive machine, and I think they're as close to a European team with the way they play as I've seen. But I don't think there are teams this year that I've seen anyway that are head and shoulders above the crowd like last year. I mean, last year Gonzaga and Baylor were better than everybody. And Baylor only had a dip because they had like 9 guys that had COVID at the same time. And it was a legit COVID thing. It wasn't just contact tracing. And that set them back for 10 days or so, 2 weeks. But obviously by the time they got to the tournament, they were the real thing and the best team, them and Gonzaga. So, and then UCLA is excellent again, but I just don't see a team that's going to separate. I think we're going to have a number of teams, maybe 7 or 8, that are capable of winning the whole thing. And that's a lot. I mean, in most years, you don't have that many teams. You think you have a bunch of teams that can make a Final Four, but winning a title is different than making a Final Four. And there are only 7 or 8 teams that I see that can really do that.
Are there any players that you think are on teams that might be hovering around like the 27 to 40 range of top teams in the country that come conference play, conference tournament, all the way in March? You wouldn't be surprised if a team with this certain guy could make a deep run.
Yeah, there are a bunch of players that are great. I mean, watching Keegan Murray from Iowa, I mean, he's going to be a first-round draft pick in the NBA. I think he's an undervalued player, but I don't know that it's necessarily he's a guy that's going to take the Hawkeyes to the Elite Eight or the Final Four by himself. But we have a number of, this is as good a year for an NBA draft class as you're going to see. They're like Jabari Smith at Auburn could be the number 1 pick. I mean, he's that talented. So could Auburn be a team that could jump on a guy like that and get farther than you might otherwise think? I think he is one of those players. Some leagues, like the ACC, is not as good as it has been. I think the teams from the middle to the bottom are pretty average, but the top of the league is really good. I think we're going to see a lot of odd things in the tournament. You always do. But, you might see a team slip on a banana peel that like last year, Ohio State had an injury. Kyle Young was hurt when they go into the Oral Roberts game and all that stuff. So you saw something odd happen there. Texas gets beat by Abilene Christian, saw something odd happen there. We'll have a couple of those. But overall, I think you'll see the best teams advance like they do most every year.
Absolutely. And thanks for bringing up the Ohio State Oral Roberts game. But speaking of Oral Roberts and mid-majors, give us one mid-major team that maybe guys should have their eye on come March.
I think Belmont is really good. they're legit. I just watched St. Mary's play 3 games in the Maui, and they're good. There are a bunch of teams like I knew Max Asmus was really good last year and Kevin O'Banner. I did not think that they would beat Ohio State even with Young out. But if Young had played, honestly, I don't see them having won that game. And that's sort of the way the tournament goes. I mean, you're out a really good player that really helps you and is always at the top of the list and plus minus. And that those things can happen. But absent an injury or absent the odd thing of Texas letting a team that can't really score get into a fist fight with you, you're just not going to see that happen all that often. And again, I call those banana peel games. Obviously the teams, Oral Roberts was really good. They were not as good as Ohio State. And a healthy Ohio State beats them 10 times out of 10. But when you go in down a starter, those are hard to make up for in a 1-game scenario.
So there's one team in particular on my mind that is not under the radar, and that's the Duke Blue Devils, who will be heading to Columbus tonight to take on Ohio State. I know you know a lot about the team. Did you expect the team to be this good this quickly?
Yes. Did I think they would handle Gonzaga and beat them in a game this early? That might have been asking a lot before the season started, but after you saw them play against Kentucky and some of their early season games, when you have a legit first pick on your team in Paolo Banchero and, their guards are really strong, and Mark Williams, they've got the sophomore big guy, is legit. I mean, he is a ridiculous shot blocker. I think he's blocked like 18 shots in his last 4 games, including 6 against Gonzaga. He's a game changer. And so having that much talent, and they've got legitimate depth at every position, and they can, they're not a great shooting team, but they shoot it well and they can really drive it. So that I did, to answer your question, I did expect them to be really good, but had they lost that game, I wouldn't have soured on them thinking that they weren't a championship contender. They're in the top 5 of teams that I think can win it. But when you're young, only one player on that team has ever played in an NCAA tournament game. That's Joey Baker. Everybody else hasn't played in a 1. And that's significant. Something you can get beat in those scenarios. But, I'm not sure Coach K's in the last few years, had a team that's more talented and together than this team. The pieces seem to fit. And last year, the pieces didn't fit. They were good, but they weren't really good. And this year, they're really good.
On the flip side, you've got an Ohio State team that hasn't lived up to the expectations, not that they were anywhere similar to Duke's. That could be because of injuries. It could be because of an incredibly tough schedule early on. What does it take from Ohio State tonight to compete with Duke? Obviously, it's a stretch to beat the number 1 team in the country any night. What do they have to do to compete, first and foremost?
Well, they have to do a couple things. One, they've got to rebound at a higher level. That's been an issue for Ohio State, is rebounding. I think they can be a good rebounding team. They're good defensively, but I think they do get put into rotations. And when they do get put in rotations, that makes it difficult to rebound out of those. And they've also, I think the injury problem is significant. I mean, not to have Justice Suing, who is a guy that can play multiple positions, and he really gets to the free throw line. Right now, Ohio State really has only one guy in EJ Lidell that consistently gets to the foul line. So if I remember right, they're even with their opponents at the free throw line, and they're going to be better than that as the year goes on. And I think when they get Justice Suing back, when they get Seth Towns back, I think they'll be a significantly better rebounding team. And they have to get good guard play. I think Florida, even though I think Ohio State, could have won that game and maybe should have. They were up, if I remember right, with 4 minutes to go, they were up 7, and then Florida went on a 7-0 run to tie it, and it was a 1-possession game the rest of the way. I do think some of the pressure that Florida brought bothered guys like Jimmy Sotos and Michi Johnson and all that, and Jamari Wheeler to an extent. But I think they'll handle that better as the year goes on. I think it's a team that's got a lot of growth, but getting healthy and getting Justice Sueing back is going to be a big deal. Not having him against Duke tonight is significant, but there's nothing they can do about it. They just have to deal with it.
So you mentioned EJ Lidell, and I think we're all probably in agreement that this Ohio State team is going to go as far as EJ can take them. Now 5 to 7 or so games into the season, when you put on your NBA draft hat, you think EJ is a first-round talent?
First-round talent, yes. Will he get drafted in the first round? I don't know. It's still pretty early. But what I'd say about EJ is, he's an undersized big guy. He's 6'6" probably. But he's always been such a mismatch out there. Even at the 4, he's a mismatch because he can take a guy down into the post. He can step away. He's so efficient and he's so good with his body. Really strong, mobile. He can catch it on the move, or he can lock you down in the post. He does a really good job of sealing, and he really runs the floor well. But he's got a turnaround jumper. He uses fakes really well. He's just an excellent outside scorer, and he's a terrific shot blocker. He was an excellent shot blocker in high school, but he was more sort of one of those guys that just would stand in the middle of the lane and protect the basket. Now he's doing it, coming over from the weak side. He doesn't let people get into his body. His timing is so good, and obviously he's so long. But he's got a real to score, and excellent offensive rebounder. I'm a big fan of his, but I'm not sure. Like, I hear what you're saying. I mean, obviously he's got to be Ohio State's leading scorer, and there's a lot of responsibility on his shoulders to play well. But what I would tell you is I think Ohio State's ceiling is going to depend on in my view, and for my seat, is going to depend on the development of some of the other guys. Like Malachi Branham, I think he's a real key as the season goes along. Like, he's got a high ceiling for growth, and as he continues to get better, and he will, Ohio State's going to reap a lot of benefits. Like, this is a long season, and I know, like, not many teams have gone on the road to play in an environment like Xavier, and not many teams have had to play, somebody like Florida this early. And they easily could have won both those games. And I think people would feel a lot different about Ohio State had they won those two. But I like their team a lot, and I think you've got one of the best coaches in the game in Chris Holtmann. I mean, he's the real deal, and so I'm very high on Ohio State long term.
Absolutely. And before we move off of EJ Lidell, I would be kicking myself if I didn't mention that he has the greatest nugget in all of commentary for NCAA basketball, because each and every game we hear it. He is one of only two-time Illinois Player of the Years. Me and Andrew are both from Chicago, and we know that the other is Jabari Parker, and that never gets old. Is that the best nugget in college basketball?
I don't know. I tend to think that Zed Key, being such a great handyman that can fix absolutely anything. If there's anything, if the lights go out tomorrow night, tonight, if the lights go out tonight, they're going to look to Zed to fix everything, because he's that good as a handyman. He's the Dwayne Schneider of college basketball. Now, you guys probably don't know who that is, do you?
Andrew does, I think, right, Andrew? Not to put.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, well, yeah, no. Well, hey,
he was the handyman. He was the handyman in a sitcom in the 70s, early 80s called One Day at a Time. And some of your older listeners will know that.
We'll do some homework after this. I got something for you if it comes up on the air tomorrow. He fixed Justin Aron's flat tire last week, literally, and I don't know if it was on Twitter or not, but that's the latest Zed Key news. Justin's dad told me that kind of out of nowhere. That's pretty good. We were just talking about how great Zed's been this year, and he goes, "Oh yeah," and he fixed Justin's tire last week. It's like the kid can do everything. It's unbelievable.
That'll come up on the broadcast.
He also has a pet snake. So if you want to say something like Zed Key slithering through the lane for the bucket, like the pet snake he's got back at his apartment, that'd be a good one.
What kind of snake?
It's a small boa constrictor. It's really small. It's a baby, and its name is Seven.
Wow, that is some high level. That's a better nugget than two-time player of the year.
Jay, and
that's in every media guide.
I'll send you a picture of his snake wearing a hat. He puts hats on his snake.
Where does he keep it during road trips?
A great question. A question that we asked him. He was on the show 2 weeks ago after he made the buzzer beater against Akron, and so he'll put enough food in there for as long as he'll be gone, because snakes can go days without eating.
And
so
to answer your next question, yes, the food is a live mouse that he puts in the tank.
Oh no.
Yeah.
So he named the snake Seven. Is that a Seinfeld thing, like a George Costanza who wanted the name Seven?
I wish. There's no way Zed thought of Costanza when he named the snake.
That's pretty good.
Oh yeah, we're just filled with those, by the way, too. I mean, it's funny because I only have teammates wise. There's only 2 guys on the team left, but I hosted just about every single one of the other guys. And like between those 2 things, I feel like even if it hasn't been talked on the show already, it'll come up. I mean, Michi Johnson was playing pickup with us when he was like in 8th grade. It was unbelievable, and he was one of the best guys out there. He was kicking me off the court. I was a senior. He was kicking me off the court.
That's
Like,
awesome.
yeah, I mean, it's just hilarious. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun team. You're spot on though when you say, you know, like, yeah, EJ, you know, you're going to get from there for, in my opinion, and I kind of tend to agree with you and Andrew at the same time. We'll go with the way the guards go, and I feel like that's how college basketball works. And Jamari Wheeler is awesome, but he's not going to give you 15 points every night. So you got to find some scoring punch from the guard position, and in order to beat a team like Duke, who's going to score 85 points tonight, excuse me, you're going to have to get some scoring. So it'll be interesting, but at the very least, I don't think anyone on Duke has a snake named Seven.
That's pretty good.
So before we let you go, I'm curious what other Big Ten ACC games you are looking forward to.
Well, after tonight's game, I'm flying to East Lansing to do Louisville, Michigan State. So I'm obviously looking forward to that, and that's where I'll be, spending most of my time. I think, the North Carolina game's going to be good. I'll be interested to see, North Carolina's got a lot of growth in them, and they've changed the way they play. They're not playing 2 big guys at the same time like they did under Roy Williams. So, they're playing with a little bit more spacing, a lot more ball screen action. Things like that. So just watching the way they play, I think will be really interesting and fun.
Jay, I have one last question for you, and then a quick little ending segment, the way we kind of end every show. My question for you is, if you could call a game with anybody, could be a former teammate, could be a family member, could be a friend, who would you want to call a game with?
Well, I've been so lucky to work with guys like Dan Schulman and Sean McDonough and Mike Tirico and Dick Enberg and all the great people I've worked with, Reese Davis, you name it. If I could call a game with anybody, people have been talking about, now that JJ Redick is getting into it, I wouldn't mind calling a game with JJ and listen to him talk about how many times he would have shot it. And I could talk about how many screens I would have set for him. That'd be pretty fun.
There you go. Reese Davis called my best basket in my career, and I have it on my phone. So every time I show someone, I always hear Reese's voice, and therefore he's got a very special place in my heart. So
that's awesome. He is a great guy and the best teammate I've ever had in anything. He's amazing.
He's obviously incredible. I've been fortunate to meet him one time, but I also the fact that he called my shot was awesome. But I came down the court and was feeling myself a little bit and turned it over after, and then he made fun of me. So you get so I tried to go kind of behind my back twice as I was getting trapped and fell down, and he was like, "Okay, Joey, you had your moment in the spotlight," and something like that. It was very funny. So
that's awesome.
as a guy who likes to make fun of myself a little bit, I'm good with that.
Well, Joey, the way this works is, Greenberg gave us the connection with you, Jay. So you can connect us with Reese Davis. It's like a pay it forward, on to the next guest kind of thing.
I would be happy to do that. I think he'd be honored to be on this show.
Yeah, it's so funny because now all my mind is going nuts. Like Robbie Hummel, who's become a friend of ours through doing this show and TBT and a number of other things. Every time he called a game, I scored also, and they called the game together, and that was that game. So like now my mind is going crazy. But we will let you go. We have to leave you with this. We end every single show the same way, and you're an avid listener, and I know that, so you know how we end every show. But we wouldn't skip out on this even for a guy like you. But we got to flip the table on you and ask if you have any questions that you've been dying to ask us.
Where is a good place to eat in Columbus?
Great question. What are you looking for?
I eat anything, so I'm always looking for something good. I like Mexican food, but I don't usually come to Columbus for Mexican food. But I'll eat anything, and I love burgers. I'm a huge burger guy. I'm a connoisseur.
There's this great Mexican place. They have it some places, Chipotle. I don't know if you've had it, but it's really good. And if you can get there, you won't run into any students there either. So you wouldn't be bugged by like pictures or anything like that.
And they're very consistent. They're consistent with what they do, which I like.
If I had to give you two recommendations, one quick, one not quick, Hudson 29 is my favorite restaurant in Columbus. It's when my parents come in town. That's where we would go. They've got burgers, they've got steak, they've got everything you want, including a French dip sandwich that is a top 3 meal of mine that I've ever had. That would be number one. And then if you want something quick, maybe a little more interesting, called bibimbap. I don't know if you are a fan of the Asian variety of cuisine, but it is like Chipotle, fast casual, pick your toppings, build a bowl as you go with Asian flavors. And it's unbelievable. It's quick, it's easy, and it's ridiculously good, and it's different. It's very different. So those are my two for you.
I'm in.
Awesome. Our treat. If it's bibimbap, it's our treat.
Yeah, well, if it's your treat, I want something a little more expensive. So we'll have to go somewhere. We'll have to find a steak joint.
Jay, you've got our word. If you say the word, we'll go get dinner with you, and it's on us. So
that sounds great. I'll take you up on it.
Perfect. All right, Jay, we appreciate your time.